This episode is brought to you by VPP Simplified. Now you can get element by element tracking and guidance for your VPP journey. Every aspect of the VPP requirements in one easy-to-use interactive spreadsheet. Achieving VPP star status can be tough, but understanding what it takes to get there can be simplified. This VPP Gap tool will help you do that. Go to vppsimplified.com for more information.
Welcome to the Safety Pro Podcast, where we help you manage workplace safety one episode at a time. And now, your very own Safety Pro, Blaine J. Hoffman.
Welcome to another episode of the Safety Pro Podcast. In this episode, I am going to revisit record keeping. I came across a great article recently from our friends at iReportSource.com. And I'll talk a little bit more about iReportSource, and we have a big announcement coming up regarding iReportSource as well. We'll do that outside of this episode on social media and record a whole separate podcast episode talking about that big announcement. But, you know, I met with the folks at iReportSource. I met with the CEO, some of the folks that do business development for that company. Incredible people, incredible company. And you know, I stumbled across some of their articles that they had been posting, and I thought, you know, they've got some really good information, and reached out. And, you know, I want to share one of these articles with you, which is the point of this episode, which is quite simply 5 common OSHA record-keeping errors you want to avoid. And I'll expand on each one of the 5, but I'll run down each of the 5 as they posted in their article. I'll have a link to the article on their blog page as well and share that with you. But, you know, whether it's the beginning of the year and you're starting fresh with a blank OSHA 300 log, or if it's mid-year, end of the year, wrapping up the year, doesn't matter. These are 5 common OSHA record-keeping errors that you want to avoid, and we will get into how to do just that. Before we jump into today's topic, I want to tell you about the official floor marking, floor sign company of the Safety Pro Podcast, Mighty Line Floor Tape. They know how important safety is to your organization, and the breadth of the Mighty Line product line covers everything you need to implement a 5S system for the increased productivity of your facility and the safety of your workers. Mighty Line floor signs are a great product to regulate workplace traffic. They are customizable to fit exactly what your company needs. You can even upload and use your own high-res logos and images. Now, what makes Mighty Line floor tape so mighty? We get people asking this a lot. Just listen to some of these facts. Their patented technology makes it more durable than other floor tapes because it is 7 times thicker than the average floor tape. The beveled edge increases durability for forklift traffic, which, you know, is going to last a lot longer. And the peel and stick adhesive removes easily with very little residue left behind. There are videos showing this on their website, by the way. And of course, it's all made right here in the USA. Get a free sample, try it for yourself, stick it down on your floor, run over it, walk on it, push carts over it, do whatever you want to. See how it works for yourself. Go to mightylinetape.com/podcast, get a free sample, fill out the little form right there. They'll ship it right to you. You can even catch past episodes of the Safety Pro Podcast right there on that page. Again, mightylinetape.com/podcast. So what are some of the top mistakes employers make when it comes to OSHA record keeping? And in this case, we're talking about injuries and illnesses. Now, even with good intentions, there are some of the top mistakes that could happen, resulting in major headaches and even potential citations. 1, not understanding what an OSHA recordable work restriction is. 2, not using enough detail in your records. 3, not using a system to track employees' days away from work and other related events. 4, not keeping OSHA 300 logs up to date during the required 5-year storage period. And 5, lack of alignment between workers' comp record keeping and OSHA record keeping. I'm going to expand on each one of these. Okay, number 1, not understanding what an OSHA recordable work restriction is. This is a very common mistake. Don't make the mistake of believing an injury is not recordable as a work restriction if your injured employee is still doing what we would call quote unquote useful work. even if that work is within their job description. Just because you've worked at maybe another employer that made this mistake, or you've done this in the past, don't repeat this. Even if it's a misunderstanding of the regulation up until now, recognize how OSHA states how much it comes down to the routine functions of the worker's job, of what they do, the tasks, okay? Restricted work occurs when, as the result of a work-related injury or illness, you keep the employee from performing one or more of the routine functions of his or her job, or from working the full work day that he or she would otherwise have been scheduled to work, or a physician or other licensed healthcare professional recommends that the employee not perform one or more of the routine functions of his or her job, or not work the full work day that he or she would otherwise have been scheduled to work. Keep in mind, none of this applies to the day of the injury. You start counting on the second day and beyond. So the day of the injury doesn't apply. The other thing you want to consider here is, we get this question a lot. What is a routine function? What does that mean? Well, according to OSHA, a routine function or duty or task is anything the employee would normally perform at least once per week. Let me repeat that. A routine function of his or her job is performing any task at least once per week. So, if I go to the doctor for a work-related injury and the doctor says, Blaine, I don't want you to climb any stairs or ladders. And I go back to my employer and I say, I can't climb any stairs or ladders for a week or 5 days, 7 days. It doesn't matter. Just, I can't climb any stairs or ladders for a prescribed period of time. You want to look at my job description and say, how often does Blaine actually need to climb stairs and ladders related to his work? Well, we have one set of stairs all the way in the back receiving dock, but Blaine works in the front office and there are no stairs or ladders, and he does primarily administrative work. That's not a work restriction according to OSHA. So you would not count days restricted in that specific example. So you have to be able to prove this, by the way. It must be a defensible position. So you can't just say, oh, well, we'll just not have him do those two things this week because it involves climbing stairs or ladders, and we'll just have him do it next week. And then, so technically he's not restricted because we can move his schedule around at will. Be careful, because you're only changing my schedule around because of the injury. And so therefore it's a restriction, right? Does that make sense? If you're restricting it, even if it's self-imposed, if you're modifying my work as a result of an injury or illness, that also falls into the category of a work restriction. It doesn't always have to be a licensed healthcare provider. So look at your tasks, determine what it is that I have to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, so on and so forth. And that way, when something like this comes up, you have documented job descriptions and tasks to be able to refer to and say, hey, this isn't a restriction because we have a written documented job description, or, okay, this falls within a work restriction. So just keep that in mind. So always have good written job descriptions with tasks and frequencies laid out for this reason. Number 2, not using enough detail in records. I did an entire episode on effective accident reports, okay? Be sure you accurately report and record all injuries each and every time, including first aids and near misses. They're all the same. Document, 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 okay? That means including as many specific details as possible in case you need to defend a certain incident or issue. For example, you may include factors such as where the injury or incident happened, the incident and what the incident was and the event that took place, the source, events leading up to the incident and immediately after, equipment involved, the state of that equipment, the exact nature of the injury or illness, things like that. Go back and listen to it was only a couple before this one, so you shouldn't have too much trouble scrolling down to find that episode, an effective accident report. So check that one out. But with something like iReportSource, you have a guided process that was designed to help make sure all information is collected and recorded in an accurate and detailed way. No matter what worker is collecting that information for future use, anybody can use this. Anybody can use iReportSource and document this information. It doesn't have to be an EHS professional. It can be a supervisor, a worker, anybody in the organization. A major part of this is making sure that you have a way for all workers to record and or report work-related injuries, illnesses, and incidents. And again, I'm throwing in there near misses. If there's no simple and accessible way to do so, it's going to be that much harder to make sure that information is consistently gathered in a detailed, comprehensive manner. Oh gosh, again, several episodes ago, I talked about this, about using an automated system. And, it gets really dicey when things are longhand, right? Paper, and you get conflicting accounts from one person to the next. You've got, everything from typos to not filling out certain information on the form and you didn't catch it, like date of hire, date of birth, things like that are required on a 301 form. And you're using your own accident report. Look, going with a digital system, it forces you to put in an answer. It won't let you continue or submit until you got, some of the required info filled out. Technology can actually help us in this regard. And especially when you have remote workers on different shifts in different buildings or in different geographically dispersed areas like remote job sites for construction or even in the service industry, technicians out at different client sites, and they have to fill this stuff out. They have to get that paperwork back somehow, scan or use their phone to scan the paper. They lose the paper, spill coffee on. I've heard all kinds of crazy stuff. Look, there are digital solutions available. iReportSource is one of them, and it makes it super easy for anybody to use. So that's the point here, is not using enough detail in the records can be solved simply by having a digital workflow that forces you to put something in there at least, right? And then you get an immediate email or notification if you're an administrator or a manager of this information. And you can see right away, okay, they just put some gibberish in here to be able to hit the submit button. They don't really know. I'm gonna follow up right away and get the skinny on this. You're able to audit that process, sort of QC that process immediately, instead of having to try to pour through paperwork later as it comes in. So just keep that in mind. Go check out that past episode about writing effective incident reports and consider what I'm talking about here when you listen to that. Okay, number 3, not using a system to track employees' days away from work and other events. I mean, do you have detailed information on what's happening with all of your incidents or claims, right? And are you able to easily see the ongoing status of any injured worker, no matter how long they've been away from work? One of the biggest errors employers can make is forgetting to track the days away from work once an employee has stopped reporting to work. You also don't want to be in the dark when it comes to updates to an employee's health that come from their physician on follow-up visits. You want to be able to track when somebody's due for a follow-up visit and make sure that they actually go, okay? Managing this claim, and it's going to sound like I'm getting into a little bit of the workers' comp side, and you know what we are, but it's related. You want to get them back to work as soon as possible. First of all, adopting a policy of no lost time. We always provide light duty no matter what is always a best practice. But staying on top of this claim as it unfolds, as it ages, you don't want it to get away from you, okay? So do you have a system to track all of these milestones, follow-up visits with reminders? It's really hard to do going from long-form paper and then having to grab your phone and put in calendar reminders and things like that. It really requires you to do that manually. But a system, an automated system built for this, is really where I'm pushing you, okay? I've talked about it in episode after episode after episode about, really leaning on technology, and no matter what it is, look for something that works for you, okay? But to fix this potential issue that you have, make sure you have a system that can track and monitor these types of, ongoing subsequent events. With that kind of visibility, you can consistently track these cases, and you can put that knowledge to use too. So you can mitigate risks that have been, causing those accidents in the first place. You're able to track over a period of time a number of incidents because you're putting them all in one place, one technological repository, if you will. And so whatever system you choose has to be able to produce some dashboards and trending, okay, like iReportSource does. So keep that in mind. Not using a system to track employees' days away from work and other subsequent events is a mistake, a big mistake a lot of employers make. Number 4, not keeping OSHA 300 logs up to date during the required 5-year storage period. Again, if you're doing this long form with papers and files and folders and, maybe you leave the company, maybe you've just come into the company and you don't know where some of this stuff is, you want to go back and see a history of injuries and illnesses in the organization. Look, we've all been there, right? And people just shrug and go, I don't know, the last gal, or guy handled that, and this is the file cabinet they used, so if it's in there, that's where it would be. And it's troubling. You represent that organization now as a manager, supervisor, record keeper, doesn't matter. So you want that information, okay? So if requested by OSHA, would you be able to present your 5-year history of logs with ours? Many organizations, for reasons I've just specified, they fail to maintain this during that 5-year period. That updating and maintenance includes newly discovered recordable injuries and illnesses as well. So going forward, you're also going to want to make sure you're logging and cataloging this stuff. And you don't want to keep, doing or continue doing it the flawed way that created the deficiency to begin with. You need to think about this differently. Also, it includes documenting changes that have occurred in the classification of a previously recorded injury or illness. What if, November, there was a recordable, and in January or February, that claim status, it changed significantly, and you may have to go back and adjust something on that 300 log, okay, which could impact your summary, right? So you're going to want to have a system where this happens automatically, okay, that will handle some of that for you instead of having to go to a file cabinet and grab a manual paper log and you're redlining a bunch of stuff and you're rewriting a bunch of stuff. It lends itself to, editing errors, leaving off information that is required, and opens you up to potential compliance problems like citations. Look, bottom line, make sure that those logs are maintained. Make sure they're easily accessible so you can always provide those up-to-date copies to OSHA or other, people that are requesting this information in a legal capacity. And I know that having a digital solution, it's at your fingertips, it's on your phone, you open the app, you get it right away, and you can email it, whether you're on vacation, whether you're out of the office. In a pinch, you want to be able to produce this stuff and get access to it. It's right there at your fingertips. Okay, number 5, lack of alignment between workers' comp record keeping and OSHA record keeping. Yeah, okay, they're separate records, but the information on workers' comp records and OSHA records should at least coordinate, and the information should be able to line up accordingly. This also means that if OSHA were to ask to see your workers' comp records, the information provided should be able to align with your OSHA log and injury reports that you're keeping, in-house, right? Or else you should be ready to explain why it does not. And I've come across this, in my years as a consultant, this was a trick I used a lot. And it always paid off paid off meaning I was always able to find a discrepancy, and it was a sort of low-hanging fruit. I know it's a dirty trick, but, we know these are common mistakes. So I would go in and I would say, hey, let me see your accident reports. And they would show me, an accident report a supervisor filled out and submitted. And then I would say, okay, let me see your insurance claim information the employee filled out when they went to, see the doctor or filled out with the insurance carrier, either a state-run workers' comp system or a private carrier, insurance carrier. I would be able to put those side by side, and more often than not, I would find discrepancies in time, position. I've even seen it as bad as it's not the right arm, it was the left arm. And I mean, some major problems with those two accounts. So they should line up. Well, with a digital system, and when I was taking a look at iReportSource, it will actually produce both records. So you go in, you log the incident and explain what happened, and you can actually copy that to, in a lot of these systems, to an insurance report or first report of injury or something like that. They're aligned because you've entered the information one time. You don't have to do it twice where the account was different. The other problem I've seen with this is we have a handwritten incident report come in from the field, and it goes to an office manager, an insurance manager, or a safety person, and you have to type it into an Excel or spreadsheet or some sort of manual Word document or whatever, and you're transcribing. It's human nature to use words and correct the original handwritten note with what you know to be true, and there's another discrepancy. So you avoid all of that with this digital solution or a service, again, like iReportSource, and that's what this is built for, okay? So look, avoid any OSHA record-keeping error. One significant obstacle with detailed, accurate, and organized record-keeping, not having consistent or a reliable way for workers to do this. iReportSource changes all of that. It makes it possible to track and manage workflow and accountability in real time. I mean, with everything from reporting employee injuries and even auto accidents, property damage, to performing job safety audits and even inspections. A system like this is your all-in-one safety solution, if you will. Everything is kept nice and tidy in one place, and it's digital. You can access it anywhere at any time. So look, technology is powerful. It can really help us minimize risk of noncompliance, eliminate potential citations, and it streamlines our entire documenting record-keeping process. At the end of the day, the bulk of your work shouldn't be collecting all this information, reorganizing it, and re-entering it into a manual database that, quite honestly, even if it's a database or Excel with pivot tables, is going to be somewhat limited in some of the trending it can produce. The bulk of your work is going to be coding, writing, formulas and creating pivot table. You shouldn't have to mess with any of that stuff. Document the events as they come in and spend the majority of your time on root cause analysis, preventing future ones, and then with the click of a button, or in this case a thumb, you can have actual trend analysis in real time as quickly as that, tapping something with a thumb. And that will drive sort of what we're learning and doing a look back of where the events occur, what types of injuries are occurring, what parts of the body, what areas of the work site. That should drive sort of our response and where we focus our energy. Imagine having to do that and think about that after you've done hours and hours of logging and administrative work. It's nuts. I mean, it's been years. I still scratch my head when somebody walks up with a 29 CFR 1910 standards, a book, and throws it on the desk and says, "Hey, I got this." And I'm like, "What are you, nuts? This stuff's online, right? Even with your phone." I mean, it's very rare that you don't have a connection, right? A data connection or internet connection. Look, gone are the days, and I remember these days. I grew up in these days where the internet was just not even taking off, right? I was working in this field. And yeah, we lugged those manuals around, and it was a pain. Okay. And it's so much easier now that the vast majority of our work should be engaging people where the work happens and improving processes. We already know we should very quickly be able to tap, sort something, filter something, and then see exactly what's happening and where we should focus our energy. And then it's all about making that pivot, facing the work, engaging with the workforce, and coming up with solutions. Technology can help us do that. So if you're not embracing technology, I'm telling you, you should, okay? If you take anything else away from this episode, and by the way, this is not a commercial. It's just, you've heard me talk about it. If you're not embracing technology, if you're not leveraging the power of the internet and some of these software solutions, and what they can provide for us with data, big data, taking all this data actually and organizing it in a meaningful way for us so that we don't have to do that heavy lifting, which lends itself to mistakes, and compliance issues. If you're not doing that, looking to these solutions, you're missing out. You're missing out on you're missing out on being a rock star. You're going to be able to produce results and provide solutions that people hadn't even considered before. You're going to be able to spend and free up a lot of time to spend working with the people that are at the risk, doing the hard work and the heavy lifting, and helping them be better, be more awesome at what they do. And that's the goal, right? Is to manage risk or mitigate risk for the company, but empower employees to be better, to perform better and safer. So looking at technology is great, but don't jump on something for technology's sake. It has to make sense. And I'm telling you, when it comes to record keeping, logging training, logging site audits and safety inspections and weekly walkthroughs, all that stuff you have to do, you need to be looking at a digital solution. And the folks at iReportSource, and they blew my socks off. They did. They blew me away. I've talked to them several times now. I've met with them. I've seen the demos. Look, I'm working hard to partner with them in this podcast because I'm telling you right now, when you look at the purpose of my podcast and bringing the tools and solutions and helping you manage safety one episode at a time, this right here, they're aligned completely with my mission. Their whole business model is almost reads the same. Is helping their subscribers, their users, manage safety better, okay, and keep people safe. That's what it's all about. So I'll have more information about iReportSource, in subsequent episodes. But as I was kind of searching for a topic to cover, I keep seeing their articles. I stumbled across their website a while back, and I subscribed to their blog. And so I get these articles that they write, and I'm thinking, man, this is a good one. And I reached out to them, and we started up a conversation. We got to know each other rather well. So look, they're great folks. iReportSource.com. Go check them out. It's the software. It's going to blow your mind. I know they have a free trial you can use for a short time to see how it works. But at least for record keeping purposes, OSHA record keeping, for injuries and illnesses, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. It's so simple to use. Anybody in your organization can use it. And that's the key thing for me, is you don't need a PhD in computer engineering and safety engineering to figure out how to use it. It is simple that any supervisor, any worker, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, that's that whole user experience, right? Design thinking for the most users is, can it be used by anybody in the organization? And the simple answer is heck yes, absolutely. So look, go check out iReportSource.com. Tell me what you think. Shoot me some emails. What are some of the mistakes that you've come across as a safety professional, or that you've noticed just getting into safety at an organization? What are some of the mistakes you have found, you've come across, maybe you've caught and mitigated that I haven't listed here? There are plenty of them, but I wanted to list the top 5. Based on that iReportSource article that they wrote. The link to the article again in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. Send me your emails, info@thesafetypropodcast.com. I'd like to hear about your record-keeping horror stories. I love it. I love hearing about this stuff and learning about how you guys out there are helping to improve safety in your workplace, and I'd love to share some of that with our other listeners. So keep the emails coming, and until the next Safety Pro Podcast episode, as always, be safe.